Hello, and welcome back to Random Vids. So as you can see from the title, today we're going to be talking about some more of one of my absolute favorite shows that I only recently started watching till last year, and that, of course, is Total Drama. I can't believe I've never seen the show until just last year, but yeah, I'm excited for the brand new season that's coming out literally June 1st on Cartoon Network, so pray to God it comes back on Netflix too. Anywho, about 2 months ago, I ended up doing a ranked series where I ranked every single Total Drama Island episode. And that video was pretty cool and all, but I need to do the rest of them. So I decided for today to rank every single episode from Total Drama Action. So Action almost kind of feels like that Mario Kart 7 in a way, if you know what I mean. It's in between two Goliaths, and unfortunately it's just not quite as good as the original season, and it's definitely nowhere near the Goliath that is World Tour. But hey, I think Action's a good season. It did downgrade some characters like Owen, Trent, Gwen, Lashana, just to name a few. It also did a good job with bringing new life into other characters like Beth, Lindsay, Harold, and the etc. etc. So yeah, nothing much else I really have to say. I'm sorry for the lack of uploads, guys. I want to try to get back into YouTube. I've just been so busy lately, so hopefully I'll try to get more into YouTube again. So, anywho, let's start with my absolute... before I start, I also want to say, for Total Drama Action, there's not really any necessarily bad episodes of Action like there was with Island. Island had a few ones that were pretty bad. Action doesn't really have any bad episodes, just ones that are more boring than bad episodes. So, with that, let's get started with my absolute least favorite episode of Total Drama Action, and that is Crouching Courtney, Hidden Owen. So yeah, this is one of the very last episodes of Total Drama Action. I remember when I was talking about the Island episodes, I kept talking about how, the beginning of the season's really good, but then the end of it, some of the ending episodes just get very dry and boring. And Action isn't really the same way, but we did have this one necessarily boring snore of an episode. So for this episode, we're down to the final, 5 teams, and they have to do a battle royale, basically. Basically, it's girls versus boys, kind of like what we had in Total Drama Island with its boys versus girls theme, except there's 5 contestants left opposed to 4, which is a little odd. So anywho, it's Beth and Courtney versus Duncan and Harold. So we do get a lot of good Duncan and Harold moments in this episode, opposed to them just fighting the whole time, or sorry, Duncan bullying Harold the whole time, and Courtney trying to train Beth as well. And then we get some goofy Courtney versus Duncan moments as well, which is always hilarious to see. The main thing that I didn't like about this episode was Owen, just because he doesn't participate in the challenge. Instead, he's there to, I don't know what the word is, not torment, I guess kind of like pester with the teams, kind of stir up some drama, which definitely isn't Owen at all, but he's doing it because he needs the money, because his mom spend it all on, I forget what, but yeah, this episode is just so boring. Owen's there trying to mess up any sort of development that any character is trying to have in this episode, and it's overall just so boring, too, to watch. It's only 5 teams left, and Owen's just really annoying in this episode, not gonna lie. And I just feel like it's not really his fault either. I mean, Chris is there making him do stuff, but then he's getting hurt in the process and is bad. Oh my, I'm sorry, but Total Drama Action just didn't know what they wanted to do when it came to their villains. So, we have this horrible... I shouldn't say. It's not a horrible episode. There's definitely way worse than this, but definitely the weakest episode of Total Drama Action, in my opinion. Definitely the most boring, too. Number 26, Aftermath 2, Forgive and For Gwen. Not gonna lie, I'm one of the people who really love the Aftermath show. I think it's just such a great way to kind of split up some of the episodes, especially seasons like this that are so long that don't really need to be that long. But anywho, this is the second Aftermath in this season, and in my opinion, it is easily the worst Aftermath out of Not just total drama action, but the worst aftermath of all. What happens in this episode, you may ask? Just a bunch of drama and a bunch of stupid stuff. Like Bridget and Jeff fighting because Jeff is now Captain Hollywood because he will do anything for views, ratings, and for that 5 stars. Just really pulling Jeff out of character because that is not Jeff, and he's instead more like the complete opposite. I don't know why they decided to make him the villain of Aftermath in action, but they did. And when they weren't focusing on that, then they were just focusing on the stupid drama between Trent and Gwen. Oh goody, that's exactly what I came to watch the Aftermath show for. To watch more stupid drama about Gwen and Trent. Now yes, it is called total drama for a reason, but you see, when you keep at this stupid love triangle and then them talking about how upset they are with how Gwen broke up with Trent and no one likes Gwen, it just goes on and on. And then you start the whole thing with them showing Courtney, Gwen, and Duncan. Of course. So technically this was the episode that started the To Love Triangle. Okay. This episode isn't bad. Like I said, there's no episodes in action that are bad. There's just some that are more boring than others, and this is easily one of the most boring episodes of total drama action. There's nothing that happens in it, and it's just pretty square. Nothing else I really have to say. Number 25, Beach Blanket Bogus. Yeah, what a bogus episode this is. So the episode actually starts off kind of good, where the total drama cast have to ride a surfboard in different silly movies and stuff, which I guess that's kind of cool and all, but the episode immediately goes downhill once Trent starts using that number 9 thing. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, this is the stupid episode that started the whole breakup to begin with. Okay, well, there was a lot of build-ups, but at the same time, this was definitely a big episode for that. And guess who the main character was in this episode? You guessed it, Trent. And his team didn't even end up winning, but it was a non-elimination leg, thankfully. But still, like, geez Louise. Then we get to see the whole stupid love triangle with Trent getting super obsessed with Gwen and afraid that she's going to randomly go for Duncan. Now, why would you think that would ever happen? Clearly the writers didn't make 2 people similar just to make them start dating, right? Right? Yeah, this episode is kind of poopy, not gonna lie. And the main reason why is Trent and Gwen. I swear, these 2 characters got so derailed in this season. Trent with his weird number obsession, and then Gwen pretending not to care. I don't even know what they tried to do, but it was pretty dumb. Unfortunately, what could have been a fun beach-centered episode turned into a stupid Gwen and Trent slowly drifting apart episode. Hooray, that's exactly what I wanted to come watch Total Drama for, to watch Gwen and Trent slowly but surely break up. It's such a bad episode. That definitely is what destroys this episode, because besides Gwen and Trent, the rest of the episode is decent. Like, I think it's pretty cool, them going back to the island, the whole challenge before that, and of course the challenge itself is really good, building a sandcastle. I think that's really cool and all. It's just they had to ruin it with all the Gwen and Trent stuff. And there's still more Gwen and Trent episodes, of course. Number 24, Aftermath 1, Trent's Descent. Another boring Aftermath episode. At least this one isn't quite as stupid as the second one, but it doesn't mean it's much better. So, Jeff and Bridget have already been voted off, so what did they decide to do in the time that they're voted off? Well, start their own show, aka the Aftermath show, and like I said, I really think it's such a great show. However, for this season in particular, they decided to make the villain of the show Jeff, because, you know, that makes all the sense, because that's totally in character for him. Like I said before, he's the cool party dude. Why is he all of a sudden becoming, as Bridget likes to call, Captain Hollywood? I don't know, it's Total Drama Action really didn't know how they wanted to do this Aftermath series, and not gonna lie, a lot of the episodes from Aftermath were pretty dull and boring. Not saying they were all bad, but Jeebus. They're not really bad, they're just really boring. They're so boring that they are bad. Now, we got to see Izzy and Trent, because those were the two who've been voted off, besides Bridget and Jeff. So I guess that's kind of cool and all, but they really should have focused more on Izzy opposed to Trent, because now we just get to see Trent wallowing in his pain through his now official breakup with Gwen. And for the most part, a lot of people are on Trent's side and feel bad for him. I mean, hey, I feel bad for him too, but Trent, you did kind of act very weird in front of Gwen too, so, I mean, you kind of had it coming, buddy. It's just another one of these dumb Trent and Gwen episodes. At least this one isn't quite as bad as the other one, the beach one, but jeez Louise, it's like the second half of the episode. The first half of the episode is basically just them explaining about what Aftermath show is going to be. The second half is just Trent, and that's the rest of the episode. It's better than the other one, but it's still definitely nowhere near the other Aftermath shows we have. Dial M for merger. Sorry, I forgot to say the number 23. So this is around the point where all the teams start. So this is the point where the teams end up merging. And such an interesting merge. Some of them have been in the previous merge in Island, and others, this is completely new for them. My problem is the challenges themselves. They're just really boring in my opinion. So the first one, they have to escape. They have to collect this like gem thingy before the place blows up, and there's a bunch of lasers nearby. So Duncan watches as Courtney tries to get her way through. Lindsay and Beth kind of get stuck together, and Lashana kind of gets all twisted around. Then eventually they end up escaping, and they end up with these other bombs, and they have to figure out how to stop them all from exploding. But they end up exploding anyway. I don't know, they don't really do much with this episode. It's just kind of a meh one, especially in comparison to like other merge episodes, like even from original Total Drama Island, where they brought back 2 contestants that got voted off and did a pretty decent challenge. But in this season, the challenge that they did for the merge was just so boring, in my opinion. Definitely one of the weaker episodes of action. Nothing else I really have to say. 3 to 10 to Crazy Town. Luckily, this is the last episode of the stupid Gwen and Trent drama. So, anywho, this time the movie theme is Western. So, what are most Western movies like, you may ask? Slow and dry. Well, I guess that sort of is like this episode. Not gonna lie though, the challenge wasn't half bad. Both of them actually weren't half bad. First one, they have to jump off this thing and land on a cow or a horse, I think it was, which that's pretty funny, I guess. But the better part of the episode is where they try to lasso each other up, which I think is really funny. I like the twist where the cattle end up lassoing the cowboys, which is a hilarious twist. And there's some funny Lashana versus Heather moments in this episode too. I don't know what it was with season 2 with Heather. She was just so goofy throughout the whole thing. Probably half the reason is probably because she's just trying to do everything while being bald, which is hilariously funny because she's the only character to do a full season while being bald. All the other characters either got eliminated or their hair grew back. Like Sierra, she got eliminated, but then came back in All Stars, but her hair started growing back. And then like Stacy, she got eliminated, etc., etc. But yeah, I think the episode without Trent and Gwen is decent, but because we had to have the Trent and Gwen stuff, of course that's going to make it a lot worse. At least it doesn't feel like it's the main center of the episode, like Beach Blanket Bogus seemed to be. This episode just seemed to be kind of like a descend even further down to the breakup point, which is exactly what ended up happening. Towards the end of this episode, Trent and Gwen ended up breaking up, which is the first ever, like, breakup in Total Drama, and it's a very hard one to get through. Not gonna lie, because Trent and Gwen are such a great relationship, and they only got ruined because the writers wanted to see Gwen and Duncan together. Wow, you know how many characters you destroyed because of that? Wow. But yeah, besides the Trent and Gwen nonsense, the rest of the episode, I guess, is fine. Number 21, Rock and Rule. So this is a kind of interesting episode focused on rock and roll instruments. Okay, cool. Yet again, kind of like Three to Town to Crazy Town, I think the challenge itself is pretty decent. Where where the contestants are there trying to play who can play the guitar the best, and then trying to do a celebrity walk, which is kind of silly. But the biggest problem about this episode is the elimination. So this episode, they did bring back Owen, which I guess is kind of cool. But they decided to do a horrible, stupid elimination. Yes, you guessed it right. This is the episode that Lindsay gets eliminated in. And because it's Lindsay, they have to find the most stupidest way for her to get eliminated. Kind of like Island, where you had that stupid role. And now for this season, she decided to vote herself out of the competition. Completely by accident, of course, but really? That is even... I don't even know which one is more stupider, but they're both so stupid. And that just completely destroys this whole episode for me, in my opinion, because I know what's going to happen in this episode, and I know who's going to get eliminated. And it doesn't make any sense for this elimination either. People complained about Mike and Zoe making it to the finals in All-Star, but honestly, most of the other teams at that point have made it to the finals, nor they didn't really needed to make it to the finals. Sure, Mike and Zoe didn't do as much as their original season, but at least it made sense. For this season, Lindsay did a whole bunch in this season, and it was definitely the best season with Lindsay in it, just because the fact that, like, she was the smartest, she stood up for herself, and she stayed in it the longest. But they decided to eliminate her because rumor has her voice actor couldn't be there some. But apparently they were there for the Aftermath show, or apparently she was there for the Aftermath show, so whatever. Besides the horrible elimination, the rest of the episode is decent. Number 20, Full Metal Drama. So we're at the point now where the episodes aren't necessarily below average, they're just more kind of, I shouldn't say they're not necessarily boring, they're just kind of like, starting with this episode. So, for starters, there's some funny things that happened in this episode. Like, this was the episode that happened after Owen had his teeth wired shut, so they have to try to feed him food through a straw. However, Lashana ends up drinking it for some unknown reason. So then she gets the gas from both ways. And on the other hand, Lindsay ends up taking control of the team and becomes Admiral Lindsay, which is hilarious. It's definitely a big Lindsay moment right there. But hey, I like it. It's hilarious, like I said. So this is a war-themed episode. I think it was done pretty well. Izzy with Explosivo trying to blow up everything, which I thought was hilarious. And Beth and Lindsay being friends as always. Owen's always there. Plus the Duncan, Harold, and Lashana moments in the episode is good. And I don't remember what I was talking about. Basically, towards the end of the episode, they end up eliminating Izzy again. So, this time for good. And that's about it for this episode. Just okay, I guess. Number 19, Masters of Disasters. So, yeah, this one is the episode before Full Metal Drama. So this was the iconic episode where Chef throws the book and it hits Owen right in the jaw and breaks his jaw. So then Owen ends up going to, I think, the hospital then for the rest of the leg. And honestly, this episode's pretty good. I just think it's kind of more forgettable and dry compared to some others. Now, yeah, it does have the infinite, whatever this thing is in the picture. And it does have a few funny moments here and there, like Lashana telling everyone about what she told her sister in the one challenge, etc., etc. I don't know. There's nothing else I really have to say about this one. I don't remember this one much. I think it's fine, but it's not one of my favorites. Number 18, Oceans 8 or 9. A lot of weird names for Total Drama episodes. Anywho, So in this episode is a bank-themed episode, or a bank robbery. I think that's what the theme was. So basically, in the first challenge, Lashana and Owen are stuck in prison cells, so everyone's trying to help them out. And while well, I don't even know what you want to call it. The one team helps Owen out, the other team doesn't help Lashana out, and they end up rescuing Courtney. I guess they didn't really rescue, but they ended up getting Courtney, and this is when Courtney ended up on the show, which I think is pretty cool, and I like Duncan's reaction to Courtney being back, but they aren't on the same team this time. Courtney's on the other team. Then they end up trying to build cars and drive down to the finish line. And that's about it for this episode. I did like the Duncan, Harold, and Heather moments in this episode. They were hilarious. I swear, that team is just so hilarious. And so iconic, with Harold, Lashana, Heather, and Duncan. 4 amazing total drama characters in one group. Yes, please. At the end, they end up getting rid of Owen for the first time. First out of 2 times, because remember, he came back. So yeah, nothing else I really have to say. I think it's a fine enough episode. Number 17, Aftermath 3, Oh, Win or Lose. So, by this time, the Aftermath show finally started changing from the other crap that we had in the first 2 episodes. Luckily, a lot of the drama and stuff changed, because now we have 3 more characters here on the show, being Owen, Heather, and I believe Lashana is the other one, which is interesting, and it's cool seeing their little stories, and they're 3 really great characters, too, who did decent this season, or at least were fun enough to see, plus Bald Heather, need I say more? So this is the episode that Owen ended up finding out about his mom wasting the money, I think it was, or something. I forget how that worked, but apparently they were bankrupt, and that eventually led to Owen coming back on the show. Luckily, the whole Gwen and Trent drama is done at this point, so we don't just hear about that for half the episode. And Jeff finally realizes the mistakes of his ways by the end of the episode. But that led to a lot, by being electrocuted in the chair, and with Bridget breaking up with him. But luckily, with Jeff apologizing, they end up getting back together, and it ends good. I forget which Aftermath it was, and which season it was. Actually, no, I think it was season... No. It was this season, I think, where they had the chair in the middle of the piranhas for, I believe... I don't remember, but I believe it was this season. It might have been World Tour, but I forget. Basically, Izzy comes in, and Chef is chasing her, and then all of a sudden, she moves out of the way, and Chef ends up on the chair. Izzy pushes the button, and Chef ends up in the water of piranhas. It's just such a goofy scene. I forget, like I said, I forget if this was action or World Tour. I think it was action, because, I mean, they were all stuck in a plane during World Tour. But yeah, for the Aftermath show, this one was definitely a better one, and it felt less filler than the other ones as well. It still wasn't my favorite Aftermath, and it was probably weaker than, and it was still weaker than all 4 of the Aftermath episodes from Season 3, but it's definitely a better one from Season 2. Number 16, 2008, A Space Owen. Why does, like, half the episodes have to have Owen in the name of it? Well, I guess he is kind of the icon of total drama, but still. So now, this is a space-themed episode, and it's pretty great, the challenges they do, like riding around in the cart, as you can see, and eventually, in the machine that makes them go really, really fast, and they end up eventually puking. It's pretty funny, although the puking part of it is definitely disgusting, but better than Season 1's brunch of disgustingness, that is for sure. Also like how Duncan and Harold are starting to get more nicer-ish towards each other. Sure, they still fight from time to time, but not as much as the other episodes. At the end of the episode, they end up sending home Harold, which I think was such a dumb decision, because Harold had a lot of character development in this season, and a lot of character potential, too, that they kind of just threw it out the window. It's still better than what they did with Lindsay, but Geez, he could have made it to the finals. Don't put Duncan and Beth in the finals. This was definitely not their seasons, but Harold and Lindsay, that would have been such a great finale. Plus, it still would have been one person from each team type of thing. But nope, we got Duncan and Beth instead. Definitely one of the weakest finalists. Yeah, nothing much else to this episode. It's decent. Number 15, Top Dog. So this is the before the final two go on, where we still have Courtney, Beth, Duncan, and Owen. And we have a animal themed episode, which I think is kind of cool. So basically they pick their own animal, they train it, I guess. I forget how it works, but basically Beth and Duncan are the ones who end up training their animals. Courtney ends up beating hers up, or possibly even worse, and Owen, I don't even remember what happens with Owen. Owen had a bear, that's right. And yet again, because Owen came back, you know the routine. Owen's here trying to spicy up the drama, which yet again is just not Owen, which is definitely the weakest parts of this episode, but I do agree with the eliminating Owen again and getting rid of Courtney, because this was definitely not her season either. Yeah, there's nothing else I really have to say. I do think it is better than the one we had from season 1. I think it was called Wawanakwa Got Wild, which was just okay. This one is better, though, where the attention is more on training the animal opposed to catching the animal. Yeah, nothing else I really have to say. I think this episode is pretty good. Number 14, Aftermath 4, Who Wants to Pick a Millionaire? So out of the Aftermath shows we got in season 2, this was definitely the best one out of the Aftermaths. It has the most going on, it's the most interesting, and that's about it. It's still not as good as any of the 4 Aftermath shows from season 3, but hey, I still think it's a decent episode. So at this point, Beth and Duncan are the finales, and they end up both rushing into the set at the same time, meaning it's a tie, right? Well, no. Instead, they end up coming up with different challenges to see who ended up winning, along with some other funny things like behind the scenes with Chris and stuff, which was funny, and seeing Chris and Chef try to get back to the set, which is really cool. Although this episode definitely does play around a lot and tries to go as slow as possible. Definitely not as slow as Total Drama Island from the original season. That was really slow. But yeah, you can definitely tell they're trying to play around a little bit to get rid of time. But for the first and only time in Total Drama history, they end up voting for who they want to win. And in some cases, it's Beth who won, like the last 2 times I watched it, aka the Netflix version. And the first time I watched it, it was Duncan, which was a YouTube version that I watched. So whoever you want to win, that's usually you see, I like Duncan better as a character than Beth, but I think Beth deserved it more in this season than Duncan, because I think Duncan, basically, this definitely wasn't Duncan's best season. I think his original season was still his best season. Beth, on the other hand, this was definitely her best season, so she deserved it more than Duncan did. Duncan really had a lot of plot armor in this season, I think. Yeah, nothing else I really have to say. It's a decent episode, I guess. It's definitely not as good as the finale from season 1, but it's good. It's fine. Number 13, The Sandwich Project. Now we're really getting into the good episodes. So, Sandwich Project is our horror-themed episode, and, I mean, let's be real, it's definitely nowhere near Hook, Line, and Sinker from Season 1, but, hey, I still think it's a great episode overall. So it starts off with them trying to scare their own teammates, which is funny, which we get to see some funny scenes like Owen and Izzy kissing, and DJ trying to scare them, and it doesn't work, and then Heather and Duncan trying to kiss, which was also hilarious, and I believe it was Beth who tried scaring them, which, yet again, just didn't work. It was such a goofy beginning. And then the second half of the episode, I feel like there was a part in between what I'm thinking, but then Lindsay's team ends up in the cafeteria, and then Duncan's team ends up trying to scare Lindsay's team. So everyone on Lindsay's team except for Lindsay gets scared by all the stuff that Duncan's team tries to do until I guess apparently the ghost reader that Lindsay has goes off, and then she's scared too, and everyone goes running for their life. Also like how DJ just sees images of her mom, and it's really just Heather that he's seeing, which is funny. But at this point, DJ has been cheating a little bit, or I should say cheating with Chef. So DJ feels really guilty and bad, so he ends up quitting the show, which... What is it with the horror themes and DJ getting eliminated in them? At least season 3, DJ doesn't get eliminated in a horror-themed episode, but seriously, it's just goofy how it works like that. But yeah, nothing else I have to say. I think it's a great episode. Not quite as good as the original horror-themed episode, but I still think it's good. Number 12, Monster Cash. Man, such a great way to introduce Season 2. So unlike Season 1 with the Not So Happy Campers Part 1, where we slowly get introduced to each team, now we've seen a full season with these teams, so we don't really have to have that slow introduction. Instead, we can get right to action, haha, get what I did there, and get to one of the challenges in the first episode, this being, well, I guess it's called Monster Cash, where they have to run away from a monster who I guess is supposed to be Godzilla. So I believe Owen ends up winning because they couldn't even pick Owen up. I guess it's Chef is the one who's controlling this Godzilla, and he couldn't even pick Owen up because I guess he's too big. This episode really got me excited for Total Drama Action the first time I saw it, just because I'm like, oh cool, I get to see all these teams that I really liked. Well, for the most part, a lot of these people that I really liked back in action, and it's just such a great starting episode for Season 2. Nothing else I really have to say. It's good. Number 11, Riot on Set. Man, such a classic episode to this season. So this is the, I guess now, third episode of Total Drama Action, and at this point, 2 people have already gotten eliminated, aka Jeff and Bridget, because they didn't do anything in the last 2 episodes except make out the whole time. Anywho, this is the first real episode where now we're into teams, and unfortunately for Gwen and Trent, they are on the opposite teams. So yes, surprise, surprise, this is the episode that started the Gwen and Trent crap that we had to deal with for the first half of this season. Besides that, I do think this episode is really great. Basically, they're trying to build a set and then put on their own movies. And Duncan's is about a sad movie, and Izzy's is about, I don't really remember, but yeah, basically Duncan's team cooperates together and they end up winning. Izzy's team, on the other hand, end up not really cooperating with each other, and they end up losing, and they send home Izzy because why not? Well, I guess Izzy for the first time, or as she called herself, what did she call herself? It wasn't Brainzilla. Kaleidoscope, that's what it was. So technically, Chris didn't get rid of Izzy, he got rid of Kaleidoscope. Oh, Izzy. Anywho, I thought those parts of the episode were funny, and of course the iconic scene where Heather ends up getting trapped in a wire and blames it on Lashana, and Harold helps her out. It's just such a goofy moment. I loved Heather in Season 2. She was so hilarious. Her, Harold, Duncan, and Lashana moments are just so funny. But yeah, this episode would have been better and probably would have made top 10 if it wasn't for all the Trent and Gwen crap. But because we got a lot of the Trent and Gwen crap, this episode just missed top 10. Number 10, Alien Resurrection. So this is basically kind of like a part 2 of Monster Cash, but I find it a bit better. So in this episode, or I guess this part 2 of Monster Cash, Chef ends up dressing up as a monster and hunts down, or I guess an alien, and hunts down the 16 players that are in this season, 18, however much there is. But yeah, he ends up hunting them all down, and of course spots Jeff and Bridget first, and they're not even on teams yet. This is still like individual mode. This is almost like pre-merge. Anywho, Trent and Gwen end up winning, so they end up being the team captains for their teams. And this is kind of where the whole Trent and Gwen thing started. Go downhill, knowing that they're on opposing teams. Although they did promise each other that they would never fight. Yeah, fat chance of that happening. And I already knew that when I first watched this season. I was like, oh great, they're gonna fight and break up. Yeah. But other than that, this episode is really great. And definitely, yet again, a good introduction to Total Drama Action. Number 9, Mutiny on the Soundstage. So this is around the finalist era with Duncan and Beth, and this is where they're trying to do the challenge together. So first they have to clean out bathrooms, and then they have to go through basically a bunch of different things that happened in the show, which is kind of a cool little flashback almost type of thing. We usually have that once per season, but yeah, this was kind of our flashbacky episode. What I really liked about this episode wasn't really Duncan or Beth, it was more Chris and Chef, where they end up having a little fight because Chef ends up saying that after this season he's leaving and doing something else, which that of course makes Chris upset, and they both get at it. But with Duncan and mostly Beth's help, they end up make up and become friends again. And then the two end up basically neck to neck, and they end up in the Total Drama Aftermath room, and that's where Aftermath 4 begins. So yeah, I think this episode is really great. The best parts about it is definitely the Chris and Chef moments, because after Total Drama World Tour, Chris definitely starts going downhill big time, although he does a little bit between Island and Action and World Tour, but there's definitely a big difference between World Tour and Revenge, and then eventually Revenge and All-Star Paca 2. Oh god, just wait till we get those seasons. Nothing else I have to say. I think this is a great episode. Number 8, the Chef Shank Redemption. This one's pretty funny. So finally, after all the stupid Gwen and Trent crap, we finally can have a little break with that and get into some actual funny episodes where they more focus on everything else besides the Gwen and Trent crap. So for this episode is a jailbreak episode, and unfortunately Trent's team ended up finding out about Gwen and Trent's weird, I don't know what you want to call it. They tried to throw challenges for each other, basically. So Justin ends up finding out and tells everybody on his team, and so Gwen ends up, to help them out, Gwen ends up sabotaging her own team so that they could lose, which of course makes a lot of people upset, like Heather, for example, which is really funny because this is one of the times that I'm actually opposed, instead of like Total Drama Island, where it's usually vice versa, I'm here rooting for Heather now, opposed to Gwen. Yeah, anywho, so Izzy ends up showing up and helps Gwen's team out, but it's too late. Trent's team, or now Lindsay's team, ends up winning, so they get mad and vote out Gwen. Good choice, because this was definitely not her best season either. I'd say season 1 was definitely her best season, and then probably season 3 follow up. Yeah, nothing else I have to say. I like the challenges overall, what they're trying to do with Jailbreak. They're eating food to start, and then the jailbreak part of it is really fun too. Nothing else I really have to say. I think it's a great episode. Number 7, $1 million, baby. So in this episode, it's focused on sports. Have you ever thought of some of your favorite and funniest Total Drama characters just playing sports? Well, that's exactly how this episode is. Unlike some of those other ones where there's a lot of challenges to it, like Masters of Disasters, this one I remember more, and I remember more the challenges more. Like, of course, the boxing ring with Harold versus Lindsay, the two who should have been the finalists, but they have to go in slow motion. And even though Harold ends up falling down, he ends up winning because he's going in slow motion. Then you have some other funny ones, like them playing football against Chef, or they have to try to tackle and move Chef, and then they have to, and then Heather and Beth play badminton, which is just so goofy. I love the way that um, they did this episode. Basically, it's just your favorite Total Drama characters playing sports. And also, like, the ending, too, where they all end up finding out about Lashana and her sister's secret conversation, so they get mad at Lashana, but she immediately tries to fix it with a cheerleading song. Well, not, I guess it's not really cheerleading, but yeah, I guess it sort of is. But Lindsay's team ends up winning because they sung about Chris. And who does Chris like better than Chris? Nobody, exactly. So Duncan's team ends up getting rid of Heather, which I guess since she already made it to the Final Four. But man, she was actually really funny this season. So especially episodes like this, like the birdie got stuck in her hair. Yeah, she ended up putting a wig on from the previous episode, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, this episode I thought was pretty decent. Well, not pretty decent. I thought it was really good. There's nothing else I have to say. Let's move on. Number 6, One Flew Over the Cuckoos. I think that's what it says. But anywho, man, such a great episode. Now, finally, with both Trent and Gwen gone, we could finally focus on other more interesting topics. Like, for example, what happens if they all pretend to be doctors for a day? So at this point, Izzy's back, and they all decide to, I guess they don't decide to, but Chris and Chef decide they're going to have a Doctors-themed episode. And randomly, DJ and Owen end up having what they think is swords, but it's just pizza. I forget what I was going to say now. Pepperoni, that's the word I was looking for. And then a bunch of other people get sick. But then all of a sudden they feel better like that? Yeah, I don't understand this episode, but I don't really need to understand it because it's just such a goofy episode overall. And I like how Lashana and Duncan at one point are taking care of everybody. And then you get to see some cool Lashana and Duncan moments trying to take care of everybody. I think it's a good episode. It's a decent one, and it's funny overall, too. It's just that it makes zero sense to me. But other than that, it's a great episode. Number 5, $1 million BC. Oh, man. Talk about a hilarious episode. So this is the first full episode with Courtney in it, so we get to see a lot of the Courtney versus Duncan stuff, because they're both on opposite teams in this season. And there's a lot of other funny moments that happen in this episode too. So basically, it's BC themed, so everyone has to now dress like they're BC themed. And lucky for Heather, they end up having a wig for her, so she ends up wearing it for the last 2 episodes that she's in. But oh boy, this episode is hilarious. So they start off with trying to build fire, and Duncan's team wins that one. And then the next one is, I guess, a challenge between trying to knock each other with bones and land into tar. And there's some really funny results, too, like Harold's platform breaking, Heather losing her wig, so she holds on to Beth's... She tries to hold on to Beth's bone, but doesn't listen to Beth, so Beth lets go. And Heather ends up in the tar. There's a lot of funny moments. Basically, anything with Heather in it in this episode is hilarious. Man, they really wanted to do a lot more funny things with Heather, and I'm glad, because she's one of my favorite Total Drama characters of all time, and has a lot of character potential, too. Yeah, nothing else really much in this episode. I think it's overall a great episode. It was a non-elimination episode, but hey, that's fine. Number 4, Get a Clue. So this is our mystery-themed episode, and man, it works so great. So obviously this is way at merge now at this point, and it's just such a funny episode overall. Although Courtney is very grouchy in the episode, further downfalling her character, but it's really cool, the mystery they have to solve. I don't want to spoil too much of it, and also it's kind of hard to explain too, but basically they have to solve a crime. And it's done in some of the most hilarious stuff ever. Plus, in this season, we had a lot of Lindsay versus Courtney moments. So, it was overall just so funny to see, and such a great episode. And I love how much character development Lindsay has gotten, Total Drama Action, and how much, like, better she's become, and even smarter, doing a lot of things on her own now instead of being bossed around by Heather. Also, the fact that Heather's eliminated now at this point anyway, so it wouldn't... So even if they were still working together, Lindsay would still be by herself. So it's just nice seeing the character development from Lindsay, and because she ended up figuring out the mystery, she ended up winning. They didn't send home anyone, but instead she makes Courtney jealous and takes Duncan to a movie night, which is kind of funny because I don't know. I think it's a great episode. It's definitely way better than the episode after this, aka Rock and Roll. Number 3, The Princess Pride. So this episode is a fairy tale themed episode, and it comes out with a lot of funny results, like the first song ever in Total Drama history with Courtney singing, because her voice actor is actually like a professional singer, I think, or something like that, or she's really good at singing. But yeah, it's kind of like an introduction to the best season of all time, aka the one after this season. But anywho, there's a lot of funny moments in this episode, like Justin and Duncan both trying to go for Courtney, and Duncan getting really jealous of Justin, which that's cool seeing how they tried to ruin a lot of those relationships with the now starting love triangle. Instead, we got to see more of Courtney and Duncan falling in love with each other in this episode. Plus, there's a lot of funny moments in this episode too, like where they try to avoid Chef, and there's just so many other funny moments. And when Courtney tries to fit the boot on, even though it clearly won't fit. But she's stubborn, so she gets her way. It's just a funny episode, and the elimination is fine by me. They just get rid of Justin. Definitely one of my least favorite Total Drama characters, mainly the Gen 1 characters, I should say. Not one of my least favorites of all time, but from the Gen 1 characters, he's definitely one of my least favorites. So, I'm fine with him being eliminated in this episode. It doesn't hurt me none. Nothing else I really have to say. Princess Pride, great episode. Number 2, Superheroed. Man, oh man, this episode is hilarious. So, of course, this movie theme ends up being a superhero theme. So, what do they make the contestants do? Dress up as superheroes, and they all have to be original, unless Chris really likes them. Like, Lindsay is Wonder Woman, but it's okay because Chris likes Wonder Woman, which is so goofy. There's so many funny one-liners in this episode. Like, Harold and his Captain Alberta thing, whenever Courtney pretends to be a cricket, and anytime Duncan tries to get back at Harold but fails miserably. And it's funny how Harold ends up actually kind of like teaching Duncan a lesson in this episode, being like, hey, like, you can laugh all you want, but like, Harold ended up winning in this episode. He won the challenge. However, they ended up sending home Lashana towards the end of it, but I mean, a lot of them were definitely getting upset with Lashana, so I guess it sort of makes sense. But yeah, nothing else I really have to say. This is definitely one of the best Total Drama. This is definitely the second best Total Drama action episode. There's a good amount of drama. It's hilarious. It's funny. The challenges are really good, and it's overall just so goofy, and definitely one of my favorites from Total Drama action. But it's not quite my favorite. So let's go to my absolute favorite episode of Total Drama action, and that episode is number 1, Celebrity Manhunt, aka Total Drama Action's reunion. So apparently it's been a few months since Total Drama Action, and now everyone is just kind of getting back together again. Or should I say, they're kind of, our two hosts, one of them of course being Blaney, and the other one I forget his name, tell us what our favorite Total Drama people have been doing this whole time. It's nice seeing some of the people that we haven't seen much, because some characters like Tyler and Noah and Cody, they're great characters, and we didn't get to see them much at all in this season. So it was funny seeing the stuff they were doing, plus everyone else. Although it was kind of annoying seeing Beth/Duncan losing their money, but hey, I mean, not a season till World Tour they kept, or not a season till Revenge is when they actually kept their money. At least this was better than what they tried to do in season 1 with its last episode. But man, this is such a great episode, full of amazing stuff. It's so much that it's hard to explain everything in this episode. So, this episode we get introduced to Blaney, of course, which ends up coming back in season 3, who I've actually grown to like a lot more. She's just such a hilarious villain, and she gets what's coming for her. A lot of people don't like Blaney due to the fact of how mean she is, but you see, she gets what's coming for her. Plus, after World Tour, she isn't shown again, unlike other villains like Mal, who is just plain annoying to watch. at least blatantly gets what's coming for her immediately once she does something annoying. Anywho, we also get introduced to Sierra and Alejandro, two great characters. And I don't know, there's not really much else I really need to say. They get reunited to go back on the show, but apparently Chris is now hosting a new show, and the original cast is just left there abandoned. So they try to sneak in, but that doesn't end up working. So instead, they end up on a bus and they chase another bus who ends up being Alejandro, the driver, because apparently Alejandro is going to be in this new show of Chris's. Anywho, the Total Drama bus being driven by Courtney ends up driving off a cliff. What I like is there's a lot of fun moments in this. Like, we get to see Duncan and Courtney get back together again, and a few other moments here and there, which of course is funny. Or DJ, any scene with DJ's mom in it is funny too. So now they've fallen down a cliff, and most of the cast end up staying there, while a few selected ones, being Jeff, Eva, Katie, and Sadie, Beth, Trent, and Justin, end up trying to go find, I guess, help. But instead, help ends up coming to the rest of the cast, aka being Chris and Chef, where they help all the contestants get back to the Total Drama action set, which is funny. And now all the people who are at that set, including Sierra, who's randomly there, and they randomly got Alejandro there too, are now invited for a season 3, aka Total Drama World Tour. I love the build-up to Total Drama World Tour. It's way better than the build-up we got to Total Drama Action from Island. This is such a great build-up to the absolute best season of all time. And it ends off with Chris and Chef announcing what the new name is going to be, which originally was going to be named Musicals, but they changed it to World Tour. Man, Action was a good season and all, but a lot of the episodes weren't necessarily bad, but there wasn't really any amazing ones that stood out either. Except for this one. This was the only main one that I was really like, wow, this is great. So with that, I think that this, in my opinion, is my favorite episode from Total Drama Action, and probably always will be. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time. Have a good day.